All right. It's the Tau Beta podcast. It's a new era. And we got my buddy Drew Porter here to start it off. Drew, how we doing this evening? You there, buddy? We are on Twitter Spaces, so we're trying to figure this all out. I believe Drew's in here. Drew, can you hear me? Drew, can you hear me? I don't know if Drew can hear me or what the deal is. Let me send him a text real quick. Okay, I have to invite him. Add a speaker. Okay. All right, there we go, buddy. Can you hear me?
Hey, Jay,
You there?
I'm here.
All right. Well, welcome in, boys and girls. Tau Beta Podcast. New era here with the swing. FindYourInnerPirate.com. It's coming someday down the road, but I just want everybody to be aware of shit. We're gonna have my buddy Porter on. We did a little fantasy coverage the other day, talking some wide receivers. A lot of fun stuff. A lot of cool breakout clips and TikToks and all that good stuff. We're gonna try and do some good social media stuff. In the meantime, one of the most interesting divisions we have in the AFC West this year. We got the defending Super Bowl champs. No better guy to have on than Drew Porter, diehard Chiefs fan. Me and him really we were able to bond over the Chiefs this last year because just Mahomes is just there's never been an athlete quite like the guy. He's still early in his career. Got a lot of other Super Bowls to win to take the crown, but definitely think Patrick Mahomes, number 15, we're going to look back in 20, 30 years and say, man, there's just never been a guy quite like that. So Drew, he's really gotten into fantasy football, the Chiefs, and we're definitely down here. I'm here in Dallas. Drew is in Chattanooga. We're just here. We're going to try and make this sports entrepreneurship work. And really, the genesis of this Tau Beta podcast was our freshman year at OU together. Go through pledgeship, go through rush, just go through all kinds of shit. Drew and I always talked there towards the end of our first year. We probably weren't coming back. We said, hey, we're going the untraditional route here. And it's taken me some time to get there. It's taken me probably till I was about 25. The last 2 years, I've really been able to get in a good spot career-wise to where it's going to give me the financial freedom I need to join the pirate ship of Drew, and we're just going to go sail the pirate ship, look for buried treasure. And it starts with the AFC West tonight, Drew. Are you excited?
Dude, I've been looking forward to this because me living in Chattanooga, some people are transplant Titans fans. Some people happen to be Atlanta Falcons fans, but Chattanooga does not have somebody that I can talk real football with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Jay, you and I were hitting each other up all last season, talking about literally every game that was on.
Yep.
And I appreciate it because I don't have somebody that I can really talk football with here because nobody's a real fan in Chattanooga. They're more fans of the Tennessee Vols.
Yeah. 100%.
But nobody has an NFL team. So it was me and Masha. We were celebrating the Chiefs game. We had a nice Super Bowl party, and it was awesome afterwards. I mean, the folks we had over were a great time. But the AFC West is going to be a very interesting conversation because we're almost in the exact same place we were last year. Last year, the Chiefs had traded away Tyreek Hill, and the big question mark was the Chargers have improved a lot. They they have one of the best young up and coming teams. The Raiders had gone out and got Devontae Adams, and the Broncos got
Uh-huh.
Russell Wilson. But now all of that is to a new level this year because
Uh-huh.
last year the Chargers had sort of the injury bug bit them again. They never really had a fully healthy team.
Right.
And the Broncos didn't really have a good captain to steer the ship. They had this great quarterback, but they didn't have the right guy steering the ship. Well, now they have a new guy. And the
Mm-hmm.
Raiders, you know, it's going to be interesting. I thought it was hilarious when they let go of Derek Carr. It might have been the
Or Jimmy
biggest
G.
mistake that they made, but time will tell
Yeah.
what's going to happen with them. Uh,
Mhm.
but we're kind of in the same position. It feels like the Chiefs got a little bit worse in the receiving core again. They didn't
Yeah.
improve at running back, which was it was a rocky road sometimes last year at the running back
Mm-hmm.
position. So it kind of feels like we're back in the same spot again with the AFC West.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
I
talking
hear that.
points.
I hear that. We're gonna get into all four of the teams in greater detail, but definitely, man, being a Chiefs fan, you know this. Chiefs have a target on their back every week, and so that's why kind of last year, they were in first place most of the year, 2 or 3 seed, but you know, I think the defense was pretty bad at the beginning of the year. And one thing you got to know about uh, the defensive coordinator, it's Steve Spagnuolo, right?
Yeah,
That's how you say it.
yeah.
He's a great game planner, especially later in the year. It's a little bit like Belichick. I've heard Belichick loves to try out things in September, October, so he can really dial in what playoff time in January, December. I do think the Chiefs they they have the two really great coordinators,
Yeah.
and Andy Reid, Spagnola, and that takes you far in the division. So they definitely have had that target on their back, Drew. You know, I think me and you, I told you about. I just a lot of the teams in the NFL last season, there just wasn't a big dominant team. I know the Eagles were, but I think a little bit of that was schedule and this Jalen Hurts ascension. It was so new to the league that it really took the league by storm. But people were trying to sell themselves on the Eagles, the Bengals, the Bills, especially early in the year with the Bills. And Drew, I saw that future bet. I think I put it in sometime November before Thanksgiving, and we hit that 150 to win 400, about 8 to 1.
Nice.
So definitely was rooting alongside of you with the Chiefs a lot last year, buddy.
Awesome.
You want to get into some off-season stuff, and we got some questions. Biggest signings. We got all kinds of stuff. Strength of schedule. We're going to talk about with all these teams. So,
That sounds great.
Drew, biggest off-season acquisition in your opinion? Being a Chiefs fan, I want to hear what you say about this first.
I mean, the one that everybody's heart was beating going into the off season was who are going to be the tackles. So it's almost a cheap answer to say Jawan Taylor, right?
Yeah,
Because
but it's the right answer.
it's the right answer. The one that I think the undercover one that I'm the most excited about was Drew Tranquil
Mm-hmm.
because
Linebacker.
linebacker. Um, he was very unexpected. It was at the time that everybody had just started to talk about DeAndre Hopkins. Oh, let's go get Hopkins. Let's go get Hopkins, who, by the way, is off the market now.
Oh man.
We could get into that, but uh, that's what everybody was talking about. Nobody believed that this was going to be our wide receiver core. and it's just kind of normalized onto people. But back then, it was a pressing need. And what did they do? They turned around and the next day got Drew Tranquil, and everyone was
Mm-hmm.
in the Chiefs community was kind of stunned by it. But when you think about it, he fills a need that the Chiefs did not have before. For all of Nick
Right.
Bolton's strengths and all of Willie Gay's strengths, they have never really had a great middle of the field coverage linebacker.
Uh-huh. I get that, Drew. I like that point. Man, that Nick Bolton, how big of a stud was he getting that scoop and score in the Super
Oh,
Bowl? I
yeah.
believe that was him.
Yeah.
I mean, what I think he's gonna really have a monster year, Nick Bolton. I definitely agree with that point. I think Orlando Brown, he's an Oklahoma guy, Boomer Sooner.
Yeah.
I love the guy, but I do think that Jawan Taylor's an upgrade there at right tackle.
Oh, he's,
And
yeah.
you had Andrew Wiley leave for Denver, I believe,
Yeah.
and you bring in Donovan Smith, just a veteran presence, been on the Bucks for a while. So
Well,
I think pass protection is important. Drew, I'll let you go for a second, but I think pass protection is good. But Mahomes, man, he's just such a wizard. I kind of like that. They make the tackles important, but I do think the Chiefs, they don't need to spend a whole lot of salary cap on their offensive line. Just Mahomes' style, the way the defenses play him too. They really do want him to dink and dunk a lot of the games. So pass protection is important for sure. But you got anything else on that?
it's the biggest um, need that the Chiefs community has. You know, it was people were basically starting the fires and they were getting ready to burn down the Chiefs headquarters when Donovan Smith
Yeah.
was not only signed but was announced already to be the starter
Yeah.
because he didn't have his best year last year at all. Um,
Uh huh.
and I think the thing that gives you peace is that Andy Reid, his specialty is in the offensive line.
Mhm.
So you just
Yeah.
have to think that he knows what he's doing. But a lot of people
Yeah.
think that that's going to be a big problem and that literally the only important thing is protect Mahomes and then
Yeah, you don't want him getting those ankle injuries like he did in the playoffs last
yeah.
year. You got to keep 15 upright, you know.
I
So,
think they'll be fine
but
at
Drew,
offensive line.
are you? Yeah, Drew, they might be fine on the offensive line, but are they going to be fine at backup quarterback? They lose Chad Henne to retirement. Blaine Gabbert's in there. Can we trust Blaine Gabbert to come in and do the kind of Jesus acts that Chad Henne's done?
Well,
that's that's my biggest concern.
Blaine Gabbert is he's kind of a fan favorite back in Kansas City. You know where Blaine Gabbert went to college?
Oh yeah, Missouri.
Missouri. So a lot of people there just have a special place in their heart for him, and I think he has a special place for Kansas City as well.
Yeah.
You know, from what it looked like, we've seen some clips from him. I don't think many people are worried about the backup quarterback spot. Chad Henne
Yeah.
provided some amazing moments. He's going to be forever a legend in Kansas City.
Mhm. Yeah. So let's get into some of the draft picks. Their first round pick, Felix. It's a hell of a name to say. Felix and Anadoke Uzoba.
Yeah.
He's from Kansas State. So I saw him play OU a lot. I watch a lot of Big 12. I watch just as much college and NFL boys. Like I really do sit down. I'm a total loser in football season. I sit down from 11 to 11 on college Saturdays. Football, it's the same way. So I think this guy, I was stoked that the Chiefs got him. Get him a little pass rush with Frank Clark leaving town, right? He's not there
Right.
anymore. So getting that guy in there. I like this Rashee Rice. He's Jerry Rice's son, receiver. Was he like a second or third round
Yeah,
pick?
he was the second round pick.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think he can come in and be pretty decent. In my Jags franchise, Drew, I think the Cowboys drafted Rasheed Rice, and he's like a stud now. He's like 90 overall. So who
Wow.
knows? They might have struck gold with him. Um, I have some questions too. We're talking about the offense, Drew. I think probably the biggest question mark, even though I don't think it'll be that big of an issue, Eric Bieniemy's gone. He's in Washington now. He's going to go over there and see what he can do.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about Bieniemy leaving?
I loved Bieniemy. Here's the thing: a lot of people would see clips of Eric Bieniemy on the sidelines getting in Patrick Mahomes' face and yelling at him after Mahomes has screwed up. The rare times that Mahomes misses in football, Eric Bieniemy is
Mm-hmm.
on his ass. That's how he is. He's an old school tough coach. And that's how he kept the Chiefs for all these years. I you know, ultimately I think what he instilled into the Chiefs, I think it's now in their DNA of those guys. So I think we'll be fine without him.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, something about me misses him. I just appreciate the more old school. He'll
Yeah.
just poke Mahomes' buttons, and then he'll
Uh
tell him,
huh.
"Hey, I'm getting to you right now. You know, get a hold
Yeah.
of yourself,
That's
buddy."
what the great coaches do.
Yeah,
If they know how to, they don't want to know what makes you tick. So yeah, the enemy being gone, it'll be exciting to see what he can do with Washington. I think they're gonna really. It's gonna be the Sam Howell show, I think, for Washington, but we'll see. I got a few other things. Strength of schedule, Drew. I want to get into strength of schedule with you. A lot of people out there probably already heard of this guy, but Warren Sharp, he's a big analytics NFL gambler guy. Comes on my favorite podcast. It, Pardon my take, and Bill Simmons' show. He's been on there before. He's really digs into strength of schedule, Drew, because when you think about the NFL, there is some teams like the Eagles, the Cowboys, maybe not the Cowboys, the Eagles, Chiefs, Bengals. There's a few teams that are elite. There's a few teams that are absolutely miserable. But in between, Drew, the majority of this league is 8-8 teams, 9-7 teams. So strength of schedule is very important as we preview this division. Um, Warren Sharp, he does a lot of good stuff with rest edge. Um, Opponents, the days to prepare.
hmm
Who has the biggest? Who has that edge? Short week road game. You play a Sunday game and then you got to go on the road on Thursday. It's brutal, and the NFL is tight on the margins. The schedule's so important. I mean, look at a team like the Vikings last year. They were so good, had a ton of wins, but if you're paying attention, man, they had an easy schedule. They got a lot of good breaks to bounce their way, especially that Bills Vikings game, Drew. Remember that
I
game?
remember that.
That game
That
was
was
on
crazy.
that game was on best. That game was on best. I mean, and that's what we love about the NFL. It's the drama. The games come down to the wire. But that's why strength of schedule is important, Drew. And so I think the Chiefs, they had a first place schedule coming this year. They're going to have the 30th toughest schedule from a rest perspective at minus 13.
Hmm.
Drew is how Warren Sharp, he has a number system. I won't pretend to know what it is, but minus 13, that's the 30th toughest schedule for rest edge. So just something to keep in mind. I do think the defense is probably my biggest question with the Chiefs. Obviously, their DVOA on defense, another analytic stat. DVOA, they're 17th last year. That secondary is young. McDuffie, Watson, those kind of guys. I do think they can step up. They did show some flashes that Super Bowl, that young defense. Even though Jalen Hurts and those Eagles, they were moving the
They
ball and
were.
scoring. That was a hell of a Super Bowl,
Yeah.
man. I really am just. I'm starting to get jacked up for the season now. Starting to do the pod and everything.
Yeah.
But you want to move it on to the Chargers? You got anything else to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think just the last thing with the Chiefs is those big games and the toughest parts. That's when Mahomes comes alive.
Hmm.
That's, in my opinion,
That's that's why he's a great.
those are the
That's
times.
why he's a legend.
Those are the times where you bet on him.
Yep.
Whenever you can get better odds on him is when you bet on him because that's when it wakes
And
him up.
I loved everybody talking about the Eagles were going to win, Drew, because I knew the AFC is just a tougher
Yeah,
conference last year, and it's going to be that way for a
it
while because
is.
the AFC just has the better quarterback,
Yeah,
and I did think that was just going to be destined for an AFC team to win.
yeah.
Mahomes is so great. What year was that for him? His sixth or seventh year, and
Yeah,
just
that
his
was, I
fifth.
think, his sixth year.
Like it would have been weird for him to only have one Super Bowl. So
Yeah,
that was another thing with my gambling mind. I am going to dive in deep into gambling once the season starts, and maybe I'll try and find some future bets for us we can talk about on pod. But
but yeah,
Drew's definitely going to come on. I think my rough outline. Sorry, Drew. I think my rough outline for this Cal Beta podcast is, Monday, Wednesday, Friday release. And Drew, I think he's going to come on every Sunday with me. We're going to talk about all this shit.
yeah.
We're going to do divisional preview every weekend up until the season. And then really what we're going to do is come on, talk about the games, storylines that have happened throughout the day. We can talk gambling, because we will have bad beats. Drew's going to have a lot of fantasy stuff he's going to want to talk about. But we're kind of going to do our own little fantasy show. That's going to be his baby. And then this Tal Beta podcast is going to be my baby. So get excited, guys. Let's get into the Chargers, Drew. I'll let you take the lead here. What you got anything about the Chargers this year?
Well, with
General outlook.
with the Chargers, I think the big thing this year is going to be we're going to get an answer to Brandon Staley.
Uh huh.
You know,
Exactly.
I think some people would have thought maybe they might move on this offseason. It would have been an unexpected situation if they were to fire him. But I think he was secretly on the hot seat if there was never any headlines about it. I think it was happening. There were most likely rumblings within the ownership. And
Mm-hmm.
he here's what he's had for multiple years in a row is one of the best NFL rosters out there.
Yeah.
Um, and it I don't know if you can say that a coaching staff could be correlated with injuries or if a coaching staff could be correlated with just being unclutch.
Yeah.
But that's
I mean, that is the Chargers' DNA. Their
it's
DNA and their history is just
yeah,
unclutched true.
unclutch and especially uh key injuries to key players. I don't know why it
Yeah.
happens, but it just does. So,
Yeah, man.
can they
They're
overcome that?
frustrating. I can't believe being a Chargers fan and what that would be like. I mean, you have Justin Herbert, who is just I think he's just an unbelievable talent.
Well, hey,
And I do get a lot of people kind of think he's a little overhyped because he hasn't won anything, but I really don't think it's his fault. All the stuff you were just saying, I think it's tough for a guy even as talented as him. I mean, Phil Rivers never really won much either. They definitely it's a big season. It's a big season for Brandon Staley. I mean, the way it ended last year in epic fashion, blowing that 27-point lead to the Jag, to my Jag, dude, my Jags come back because they're just gamers. That's Trevor Lawrence, but Herbert's a stud, man. It's just you got to win a playoff game this year, and they don't. Staley, you're gone. If they have a slow start to the season, Drew, I think Staley's out of there. Even though I think he's a great defensive coordinator, great game planner. He came out in that Jags game that first half and just had Trevor Lawrence befuddled. But yeah, man, they're a frustrating team. I wouldn't know what to do if I rooted for them as my only team.
Well, the good news is their fans have a short memory because they're all in Los Angeles. They don't know anything that happened. They just adopted the team
Yeah,
recently.
yeah, yeah. I get that. And this LA bandwagon.
Exactly. If they're
I
if they're
will say
great this year, those fans will show up. I promise you that.
this might be a hot take, but I think the Chargers and Chiefs play the best games out of any divisional team in the NFL.
They have been close for God, I mean, for years. There's never been a Chargers game that is just an easy win. And
Yeah,
it feels
it's
like the
always
Chiefs
a
just
roller.
keep beating them.
It's always a roller coaster.
But
Um,
yeah,
yeah, I think the other another good one comes to mind is obviously Steelers Ravens. Those games are epic. Just those games are just bloodbath.
always.
Cowboys Eagles is a great one. There's can you tell, Drew? I'm getting excited for NFL this year.
It's honestly this offseason has gone, I feel like, pretty quickly.
Yeah, it hasn't been that bad
So
because
far, it
with the
feels like we're
Rangers.
very
Yeah,
close.
yeah, with the Rangers being as good as they've been, I've kind of been into baseball a lot. But this is why it's kind of perfect for us to start all this stuff this last week, new job and everything. All-Star break. We Drew and I definitely are dialed in on our podcast and shit. So we definitely need everybody to go out there and subscribe, like our stuff. Drew, do you know what your YouTube channel name is?
The channel name,
Yeah.
Drew Porter Net.
Okay. Go give him a shout out. We'll get back on track with the Chargers, but we do want everybody to go follow us. Mine's jbirdie23 Twitter, Instagram jijohnson23, YouTube I think is jbirdie23 or jbirdie37. Either way, you guys are gonna like this content we're doing. We're just getting started too. This is just the beginning. Drew, I want to talk a little bit the biggest offseason acquisition for the Chargers. Could it have been is it backup quarterback Easton Stick? I mean they're gonna miss. That's another Missouri quarterback. They're gonna miss Chase Daniel. He finally
Yeah,
retired. Chase Chase Daniel, Drew. I don't know if you know much about his
yeah.
career. He was a beast at Missouri. OU had their way with them. The best year they had. They were going to go to the national championship. They only lost 2 games last year, both to OU. So definitely Chase Daniels, the guy I've followed his whole career. He lived maybe the best life you can live as an NFL player, backup quarterback, and he never even had to play really his whole career, and he made a shit ton of money. So are they going to be able to replace that, Drew, with Easton Stick?
Well, it might be their biggest offseason acquisition. Honestly, their biggest offseason acquisition was them being able to hold on to all of their players
Yeah,
because
I think
they do
so.
have the most stacked roster.
They had zero cap space, no flexibility. Yeah, they just couldn't make a lot of moves.
They put their wide
My,
receivers on a credit card.
yep. And there was a lot of talk that Keenan Allen could have been moved, or so maybe we'll see down the road. Maybe trade deadline if they're just terrible and they have to fire Staley. I could see this going either way with the Chargers. I do think they'll. I think they'll definitely win 10 games and get in the playoffs for sure. But
This is the
I
year.
think,
This is the year that we'll figure out. We'll
yeah,
figure out what's really happening there. If
I really want to see. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to finish up and say that if they do get off to the slow start, they'll trade it all away. They'll fire it. They will clean house, I believe.
Yeah, it is put up or shut up time in LA. I think my boy uh, Kenneth Murray, middle linebacker out of Oklahoma, I do think he could come in and have a breakout year for them. And that defense just can run sideline to sideline. He just is not very good in pass coverage, so we'll see if he can help, if he can improve on that with off season.
Well,
Yeah, they're
it's
just.
going to be a
I
problem.
think.
They gave us Drew Tranquil.
Yeah, yeah, he's gone, and he was a very solid linebacker. One of the things I do love about sports too is just a random thing is that teams I might have talked about this the other day, but teams love to sign guys that played in their division for a while just because of that familiarity. So if you'll notice free agent signings, you'll see guys go to like from the Tampa Bay Bucks to the Saints because I think that's how front offices kind of look at the game. It's because it is come down to scouting a lot. That's kind of how I watch that's kind of the lens I watch sports through in a way, Drew. So don't want to get too sidetracked here, but big year for Kenneth Murray. Quentin Johnson, I do have some concerns. He was their first round pick, the receiver. Another Big 12 guy, Drew. And I do think Big 12 receivers can struggle in the NFL because in college it is just to spread them out. Don't have to learn a whole lot of nuance about route running. So I think they have a big ass team, man. They got a little basketball
Yeah.
team, Drew, in there, and
I mean,
in LA. So
he
I think
he is a guy who could not be walking into a more perfect situation because he doesn't need to be anything more than a great fourth option
yeah.
because your first three options are Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And then if Quentin Johnston can get open, great. That's, but it's not even hardly expected of him.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if he will be able to, here was the thing I remember about him. He has excellent yards after the catch.
Yeah.
That was what he was excellent at in
Very
college.
physical. Very physical runner.
That works in the NFL. That's what Travis Kelce has.
Yeah.
So he was their first rounder. I think he's walking into a great situation.
Yeah. I do too. That offense would be fun to watch for sure. And if he develops into a stud, that probably makes it more likely they'll move on from Keenan Allen down the road. I think my biggest question overall at this team, Drew, you guys have a lot of guys that get injured a lot. Nick or Joey Bosa, man, he's always injured. They need better depth behind him. They need that. They need that secondary to be better. But that secondary doesn't inspire a lot of hope either, outside of J.C. Jackson. So they're gonna play a tough schedule too,
I mean,
Drew. The second place schedule, they're -6 in the rest edge for 26th in the league. I mean, one thing also I want to talk about, we talk about Staley and their defense, but their offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, Drew, did you know much about him last year? I thought he was terrible.
I I had seen the stats about him. Truth be told, I didn't really know much about Joe Lombardi until he was hired.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah. So he was the coordinator. What were you saying? I don't want to cut you off, buddy.
well, it was just that uh, I had seen that he was not very good. However, he's got the last name for the job, so we'll see. You know,
He does. Well, and also one of the biggest inspirations in how I see football is Michael Lombardi, Drew. I don't know if you heard
oh
of
yeah,
him. Big front office guy at the Patriots. His career on the McAfee show a lot,
absolutely.
and I really do see the game kind of through a similar lens as him as just a front office scout. And he would never, yeah, he would never say this about his son, but Joe Lombardi, Drew, he's a big just hand the ball off, run it, just so conservative and just not with the times of the NFL. And when you have a guy like Justin Herbert, I really do think they babied him too much. They need to let that guy air it the fuck out.
Yeah,
And Joe Lombardi, they moved on from him this offseason. It's just the offense was so stale, bro. And they bring in Kellen Moore from the Cowboys, and I do think Kellen Moore is pretty good, and that's why I'm not super fired up about the Cowboys giving offensive play calling duties to Mike McCarthy. I do think Kellen Moore is going to come in there, and I got a little fantasy nugget, Drew. I think Kellen Moore the way he runs his offense, buddy, he loves to get the tight ends involved. Look at who their tight ends. I think they got O.J. Howard, some other decent tight ends,
Gerald
maybe
Everett.
Hooper. Okay, I know Hooper went to some team in this that plays in the AFC West. But yeah, I think you need to target tight ends on the Chargers this year, Drew, in fantasy. And like another question I got on their defense is just the depth. You know, I talked about it, but I think the depth is huge for this team. Staley is a good game planner. I mean, he comes into games. He has a good. That's what I like about these young coaches. Like, what's his name down in Miami?
Oh,
The coach there.
uh,
I can't think of his name right now. He was just on Pardon My Take.
McDaniels.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel. I love those young coaches, man. They're a lot like kind of me and you. We kind of see the game differently, and just I like the younger generation of coaches, Drew. I think they're really good at game planning, especially the first half. So that's something too with my gambling that I really try and hone in on, because knowing who the coordinators are in football, what they like to do, what their styles are, that can really help you see like what kind of games you're going to have. And I do think the Chargers tend to play a little bit lower scoring games than you would think, just because Staley's, at least last year, they love to run the ball so much with Lombardi, and Staley is a good game planner. So last year I was betting a lot of unders with them, but I do think, man, it's an important year. Like the fans and media, they're not going to let Herbert get away with no playoff wins. They have to win a playoff game this year, don't you think?
Yeah, it's that or bust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the Chargers. Let's get into the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders. Mike McDaniels, it's put up or shut up time. You son of a bitch. I'm a quasi Raiders fan, Drew.
Really?
I love the black and silver.
Wow.
I love the bad boys of the NFL.
I'm sorry for
I
you.
really am. I really am a Cowboys Raiders fan, and like Cardinals and wherever Baker's playing, because of Kyler for the Cardinals. But you know me, I am all 32 teams. But the Raiders do have a little bit of a special place in my heart, Drew,
I mean,
because I like the passion and the fan base. It's one of the all-time legendary franchises in NFL.
well, I agree with you. I liked them a lot more when they were in Oakland. I respected them more. I'll say
When they had
this,
to kick field goals on the dirt infield.
Travis, yeah, the dirt infield, it was awesome. Travis
Dude, we
Kelce,
have to go to Vegas and catch a game there for sure at some point.
Travis.
That stadium is sick.
Oh my God. Well, he when the Chiefs traveled there and we played there, Travis Kelce right after the game said it felt like at times we were playing in a museum. He just said there, what however it is, it just was not like a loud football environment.
Yeah.
Felt like we were playing in a
Yeah,
museum.
that's hilarious. Did you hear about that story when a few years ago the Raiders beat the Chiefs in Kansas City, I think? Or no, it might have been no, the Chiefs beat the Raiders in Oakland. I can't remember which way. I think it was the Raiders that did this with John Gruden. They like went around the Chiefs stadium and like were like blaring like music and like celebrating in their face.
I
And
remember
then
that.
like they played again.
Uh,
Yeah, they played again later that year. Or the next time when they played, the Chiefs just kicked the shit out of them.
yeah, dude, that was
I do miss
wild.
John Gruden. I miss John Gruden being around.
Me
I'm not gonna
too.
lie.
Me too.
So Mike McDaniel's, man. I mean, we know about his past history, the Broncos, his first stint as a head coach, the way he kind of screwed over the Colts too, and took this Raiders job a few years ago. I do think he's kind of got some bad juju and voodoo on him. He's just Josh McDaniels just has some stink on him, and it's a put up or shut up time for the Raiders,
It
man.
is. I think they are more shut up. There was a report. There was a report that was talking about they didn't have money to replace Josh McDaniels.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was reported by
Yeah,
Mike
because
Florio
Mark
with Pro
Davis.
Football Talk. He reported that they do not have the money to replace Josh McDaniels, so they're going forward
That's
with.
insane. That's insane.
So, I at this point, I mean, Derek Carr, for all of his things, he was crying during the press conference last year.
Hmm.
Uh, he he just
What a pussy.
well, I mean, I love I love the theatrics of Derek Carr because he also blocks everybody on Twitter who says anything negative about him. Blocked.
He's just all about positivity,
He
man.
is.
He's a man of God. But
I'll give
if he wants to win actual football games, maybe he needs to stop going to church as much as he is.
well, you might be right. So we'll see what he was all about. But the one thing, he had some heart every time he played the game. He played it with heart,
Hmm.
and
He did, and that.
you don't feel that with um, Garoppolo. Jimmy G,
Yep.
he just he feels like he's there for Vegas and he's there for the paycheck. And
He's gonna get a lot of ass in Vegas.
oh, a good-looking guy like him, no doubt about.
He's gonna have a good
He
time.
is,
Um,
and
but yeah, that was probably.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think the Raiders are going to have a good time.
I think that is the biggest offseason acquisition. It has to be. It has to be Jimmy G with Derek Carr off to New Orleans, man. I do think I do think the Raiders could be sneaky. It's just, they a lot of moves were made. I think we did see. You were talking about Mark Davis, the owner, and it's just his haircut, man. I don't see him ever lifting a Lombardi Super Bowl with that haircut. I just don't know if he's a confetti owner. You know, there's a lot of guys. You say, is this guy a confetti quarterback? Because you see him being on having lifting the Lombardi with confetti coming down. I just don't see it with Mark Davis and that haircut. Tough for the team to overcome that.
I mean, it has to be an act. It has to be he has to be somebody who's trying to, get back at his former enemies in life through the haircut. It's
Nobody. The problem is he has so much power and money. Nobody's willing and confident enough to tell him that. Like, dude, maybe we need a new style, change it up.
you might be
But
right.
yeah,
That be the key to the whole Raiders turnaround. I think Jay, you might be the guy who holds the keys to it.
positive vibes only. Derek Carr, hopefully you left that legacy. But yeah, Drew, they did make a lot of moves. They brought in Austin Hooper and OJ Howard. That's why I thought I was talking about it with the Chargers. That's a nice little tight end combo. They shipped out Darren Waller to the Giants. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I don't think
So that's
most people view
interesting.
that as an upgrade. I think most are thinking
No,
it's a downgrade for the Raiders.
I do think that's a nice little combo, though. They got Jacoby Myers at wide receiver, one of the best receivers on the free agent market this year. They did make a lot of moves around the edge. So, and Tyree Wilson coming in as the first pick,
Yeah.
and they had like the sixth pick, I believe, or seventh,
Yeah, so
and I like that because he was really rumored to go number two. I think the Texans are really looking hard at him at number two.
I agree. Yeah, I mean Tyree Wilson I think was the one guy that you sit there and say, "Man, that's where they really improved this
Uh
offseason."
huh. And it's cool too. We were talking about Big 12 defense and how it's kind of tough for them to come in, but he's from Texas Tech, so that's really interesting. Guy from the Big 12 to go that high because that does not happen a lot. Um, You want to talk? I do have some questions on offense. Is Jimmy G's health? Is he going to be healthy, and is that O line going to keep him healthy? I mean, it's that simple.
I mean, history will tell you no.
Yeah.
Um,
Jimmy G, man, it just I would love to see. I don't even know who their backup is anymore. I think it is Jarrett Stidham
well,
still.
here's another one, Jay. To go even further, Mike Florio has been talking a lot about this off season. Jimmy Garoppolo is not even 100% solved. They have
Mm-hmm.
they have an issue where, if I remember correctly, Jimmy Garoppolo has part of his contract where if he's not fully healthy, then his whole contract is void, and that health is up in the
Wow.
question right now.
Uh huh.
So,
Makes sense.
whew, they might not even have their starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope that doesn't come to that, but definitely they got to keep him upright. Josh McDaniels, man, he's got to do better. That defense too, they can't cover anybody.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
Max Crosby, probably one of my favorite players. Him and Chandler Jones,
yeah.
that can be a great edge rush presence, but they got to cover somebody in that secondary. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They don't cover anybody. So hopefully they get a little pass rush going with those three. And their strength of schedule, Drew, it's pretty tough too with the rest advantage. They're -4, which is 24th in the league, and they need to have a good year. There's going to be a lot of changes that are going to be made, I think, or hope. I hope there's a lot of changes coming.
I think that's what
And speaking of,
Raiders are hoping for. I think you can hope for Tom Brady, who could be buying
uh
into the Raiders soon.
oh man, wouldn't we love that to start happening? Get those rumors floating in. I do think that would be one of the few spots he might come in like mid-season. Is Oakland with the McDaniels relationship from New England, Jimmy G. Who
I
knows?
think it
But
could happen.
it will be weird not having any Tom Brady this year. I think we all know he's gone, but man, just to see the goat walk away, it's gonna be a little bit sad, man. You know, he's doing a lot of cool media stuff though too. So
You know, he was
hopefully
still
we'll see a lot of Brady
in
still.
his last year. He was still top 5 in passing yards.
Oh
Let
yeah.
that sink in. You know, he's still there. I think at any moment's notice, if he felt like he could come back and win a Super Bowl with a team that
Mhm.
needed a quarterback, I feel like he would do it.
Yeah. It'd be
We'll
interesting.
see.
I think a lot of people though are just so over Brady. It's
Yeah.
kind of a little bit like the Brett Favre thing. They're kind of over it.
Well,
Um.
those same people will make it the biggest story when he comes back.
Mhm. Yeah. And speaking of biggest stories, Drew, probably the biggest storyline I would say this off season is when the Broncos brought in Sean Payton,
Mm-hmm.
and this is their last one. I still can't believe he's their coach, man. I didn't. I was really hoping the Cowboys would move on from McCarthy and bring him in, but that is just Jerry Jones, and it's why I've never been a true diehard Cowboys fan because they do dumb stuff. They should have fired McDaniel, that they're a divisional round team, and they should have realized Mike McCarthy's not going to take this current group farther than he already has. Sean Payton would have been the perfect guy, and I do think he's the perfect guy, Drew, to come in there and get Russell Wilson back on track.
He is the one guy that scares me. I was laughing at the Broncos because I thought, oh my God, they're so screwed. They have Russell Wilson, a dud that they traded for. And not only is he their locked in quarterback for years, they had to give up their first rounders for him. And I was laughing about
Yeah,
that. But
yeah,
now that same thought scares me now that Peyton is their quarterback. It's like, oh, they have
mm-hmm.
Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. That could be
Well,
a
yeah,
dangerous combo.
more than any other sport, Drew, coaching in football has the biggest impact. It is huge, especially in the NFL. And the Hackett thing, man, Russell Wilson was just not prepared. And it was an offense that did not fit Russell Wilson's skill set. I do think Sean Payton, he's going to come in, he's going to put together a system to where Russell Wilson can be comfortable throwing the ball deep because he does throw one of the best deep balls. But I also think he's going to give him, with his experience with Taysom Hill and the Saints, I think he's going to open up the run game for Russell Wilson this year.
I
And
hope
that's
so.
something they've really been missing. That's something they really missed last year with Nathaniel Hackett.
Well,
it's crazy, you know. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, they picked up P. Ryan, who you know from OU.
Oh yeah.
And he is a guy who every time we played the Bengals and P. Ryan was the running back, he killed the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think he's a good runner, and I think they got a sneaky great signing with him.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I do too, man. I think you come in and be that change of pace guy, short yardage. And I've bet on the Broncos last year. The thing I noticed, man, they could move the ball between the 20s, but they would just do some of the dumbest shit. So I do think having a big uh, running back presence is going to be good for them.
Yeah.
And like, yeah,
They also upgraded their offensive line.
uh-huh. Yeah, they bring in, I was going to say, biggest off-season acquisition outside of Peyton. It's got to be Mike McGlinchey.
I will also say another one.
I think he's a great fit for that zone run scheme Sean Payton's going to run.
Can I bring one up from the draft as their biggest acquisition?
Yeah.
They traded up for Marvin Mims.
Oh, yeah, another Sooner.
Oh, I think this guy's going to be a good pass catcher for that team. And again, he's going into the perfect situation where Jerry Jeudy is your number one, Cortland Sutton is your number two. All Marvin Mims has to be is a solid number three, and I think he could knock it out of the park.
Man, he is a stud, and he went under the radar this year because OU was so disappointing. They had a new offensive system they were trying to learn, and the quarterback play at OU was bad because the guy that was their starter was injured, and they just did not have a backup for at least 3 or 4 weeks. And even the quarterback they have still, Dylan Gabriel, he really is. He's a good quarterback, but he's not meant to be a quarterback at a place like OU. So Marvin Mims definitely slid under the radar. I was going to bring him up too. I think that's something you got to think. And they also have another little receiver, maybe the best name in the league, Drew, a Texas guy, kind of playing off OU. This guy came out of Texas. He's not a rookie or nothing. He's been in the league a little bit, but little Jordan Humphrey, maybe the best name of all time. Little Jordan Humphrey.
Yeah.
You know about him?
I remember seeing that come through. He's one of Peyton's guys. Yeah. You can chalk him up to be a Sean Payton guy. He'll make the roster.
I think he's gonna go make some big plays. I think.
Yeah, he'll make the roster and he'll make some big plays.
Yeah, and moving on to defense, Drew, biggest acquisition for them was DJ Jones, in my opinion. Stud defensive tackle. PFF was really high on that signing. I think he's going to come in and just eat up in the middle, be a big presence that they kind of need. They've been lacking that a little bit.
Well, they needed one. They lost their defensive tackle.
Who did they lose again?
I forget his name, but he went out. They were thinking of trading him to the Seahawks. Whenever they.
Well, are you thinking of Bradley Chubb?
Yes. No.
Last year.
So
or somebody else.
Chubb they traded. They had a guy that signed with the Seahawks, and he was he was one of the top of the market, and he went over there and said, "You guys should have traded me. You guys should have included me in the Russell Wilson."
I know that. I know that. his name is escaping me right now, but yeah, DJ Jones, look out for him. I mean, we talked about a little bit, just general Denver outlook. Hackett was so bad. I do think I wouldn't write Russ off completely, man. He's got a really long contract, and he needs to be good, man.
Yeah.
Because if he isn't, and he really is just the old like washed up guy that he looked like last year already, then and he can't run anymore, he's got to be able to. I got to be able to see that he can use his legs if I'm going to trust betting on them this year.
Well, he has zero expectations, and he's a guy that needs to prove it. Otherwise, his Hall of Fame is totally in question. So
Right.
he's going to have to figure it
And
out, and I think he might.
mhm. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Strength of schedule, Drew. They're 13th plus 3 net rest at edge, so they got a decent schedule. That last place last year, so they should have some good easy wins. It'll be interesting.
And I looked it up. It was Draymond Jones.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good little player.
Yeah.
And so, guys, that's gonna wrap up. Went through all 4 teams. Maybe Drew would do a little predictions right here. I wish I would have thought to maybe do some bets beforehand, some future bets I might be on, but we can get into that at a later point. I think obviously it's the Chiefs' division to lose, but I would not be stunned if the Chargers do take off and win 13, 12 games. And I do think it could be a dogfight with those two, and I do think the Raiders are going to be improved, and the Broncos especially. So very tough division, even though it is the Chiefs to lose.
I want to take a stab at some predictions right now.
Okay.
I think there's a world where everything works out for the Chargers. This is going to be a pessimistic view from my point. If I'm starting from the premise that the Chargers do not have any key injuries, I can see them winning 12 games.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see them beating the Chiefs in the last half of the season to where they get higher seeding than the Kansas City Chiefs and they win the division. I think they could get 12 wins, Chiefs get 11.
Right.
I think Sean Payton takes the Broncos to 9 wins. And I think Josh McDaniels is fired before the season is over. And I think the Raiders don't surpass 4 wins.
Yeah, I hate to say it, Drew. I do think the Raiders, I could see them finishing last place. I think if you simulate this 1,000 times, the Raiders are going to finish last a lot more, or not a lot more, but they're going to finish last more than any of these other teams. Because I expect a lot of improvement from the Broncos. I kind of think that offense could be electric with that receiving core and the running back. And Sean Payton is just such he really is one of the best offensive minds I've ever seen in football. So I'm excited to see them. I do think the Chargers, man, I think they could win it, but the more I think about it, I don't think they have the necessary depth. I think they come out red hot out of the gate, but I don't know, man. That DNA we talked about, they will find a way to fuck it up, I think, like they always do.
Well, I think they might. It could be their year. As much as I
Mm-hmm.
hate to say it, I think this could be the year that that much.
Herbert has to win the playoff game this year. People are going to come after his ass, and I don't want that to happen because I really think he's just up against it with a lot of dynamics with the Chargers, their history, whatever it is. No depth. The O line is bad. He can get injured, and I don't want that for him because one thing I do want to do.
Hey Jay, I think you accidentally muted yourself.
Okay. Did I?
Yeah, you're good
What's
now.
the last thing I said? What's the last thing I was saying?
I thought you were cutting out. It was a little while ago. We were talking about the Chargers, but I don't remember exactly where you went out.
Okay. Yeah, I was talking about Herbert and how great of a quarterback I think he is, and I just don't want. He has to win a playoff game this year, Drew, because I think people are going to start coming after him, calling him overrated, and I don't want that for the guy. I do think he's outside of Mahomes and Burrow. I think that's 1 and 2. I think he's right there, Drew. And I think one thing I was just thought about, I do think it could be a very good podcast topic. Is I want you and me to do a pod at some point where we just rank 1 through 32, the starting quarterbacks, who we think are the best, because it's so fluid with how the game is played, or just the quarterbacks. They have bad. The coordinators are so important. If you have a bad coordinator, like we saw with Wilson, you can look absolutely miserable and even worse than you are. And with a good coordinator, kind of like Tua, I think to a degree with McDaniel. I don't think Tua is that great, but I think he gets the absolute best out of Tua. So it's a huge year for Justin Herbert because he is going to get his big contract if he hasn't already. I don't think he has, but I am very passionate about the quarterbacks because I think a lot of people think they know who the best ones are, but I do think there's so many factors of coordinators, your O line, especially the Chargers O line, has to keep this guy healthy.
You're,
And I do think the Chargers on paper might have the most talent out of anybody in this division, but I think the Chiefs just have 15, and they have Andy Reid, and they have Kelsey, and I think they have better depth overall. So I do think the Chiefs prevail here in this division.
I think so.
So yeah, that's gonna wrap us up, guys. This is a ton of fun, Drew. We're gonna be doing this Sunday night, rest of the way. We're gonna do a divisional breakdown. I think let's go to NFC West next, Drew. Let's do West, and then we'll do the East, and then we'll do the North and South.
Love it.
How's that sound?
Love it.
Yep, and I'll be back reporting Tuesday night. Have another episode of Tal Beta out. Don't know what we'll get into. Maybe some baseball stuff, even more some college football as we get closer. We're going to be talking about it all. I do think I'll probably do it on Twitter Spaces like we have been, and then hopefully I can extract the audio. Drew, can I do this? I can extract this audio and put it out as a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, you have for
Okay.
me what I've figured out is rather than extract the audio, you have to screen record it.
Okay.
And you
And I
yeah.
did screen record, but I didn't do it for like the first 3 to 5 minutes of the show.
Okay.
So if there is a way I can get the full audio, that would be great, because I do want to like add like intro music and all that kind of stuff. Have it make this like a real
Yeah.
podcast too.
Yeah. All right.
So if you can help me out with that, buddy, we'll end it here. This is a ton of fun, guys.
Yeah.
Nobody came in to listen, but that's cool.
It's fine. It's fine. We'll get
Yeah.
there.
All right, bro. I'll hit you up later.
All right, later, Jay.